𝗥𝗵𝗲 show. Thank you for always tuning in week in and week out to listen, learn, and growth. And growth is where it happens because you are consistent in showing up. And Rhea and I, we always want to employ our knowledge onto you. So thank you for tuning in. And today I'm going to be leading the conversation. But before I do come on, I want to introduce myself. And my name is 𝗥𝗵𝗲, and welcome.
And my name is Rhea, and
Thank
welcome
you to
our show.
Today, it is assumptions. And there was a part in my life where I was always making assumptions. And number one, we make assumptions because, so we assume. We assume based on beliefs, okay, and facts. Now, if you're not able to, see the facts. So if I was, say, for example, I was saying, I am going to, in my day today, I am going to make sure that, I have all the tasks done. Okay, so that's a fact. But that is also a belief that I know I am going to get all the tasks done. And so where assumptions could come in, because this is almost like it's almost like a catch-22, because you have the facts and you believe. It's just like the last time I was talking about is the knowing, okay, is your knowing doing gap. And remember I said that, we know as to what we're supposed to be doing. We know everything that needs to get done. But then, so that's one thing, okay? So that's one thing, knowing that you're here right now and you are striving to get here, to doing what needs to get done. So knowing, so if you follow my drift here, so if you know what you know, and what needs to get done, but then the question comes down to, are we doing what we said we know what needs to get done? And so that is the same as assuming something. So say I said to Rhea, I'm going to have a really great day, and something in the middle of the day may not go as the way I had planned. And then Rhea might say, but 𝗥𝗵𝗲, but you said you were going to have a great day. You said your day was going to be great. And so now what happened? So then now Rhea is going to say, she's going to make an assumption, because that's in her head. And oftentimes, friends, we make assumptions. And this was me too. This was me once upon a time. I would always make assumptions. I was always assuming that I knew what was in the other person's head, in their mind. But 99% of the time, we don't know we don't have the crystal ball. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what the other person's thinking. The best way that when I learned this material, and this is what I practice right now, is I ask the individual, I ask them, well, can you explain? Can you clarify? Can you explain? Can you clarify? Can you go over what you just said? So is listening and hearing and paying attention is one thing, but as I know myself, I may not have heard what Rhea was saying. I may not have heard what the other person was saying. And so I will easily come back and say, what did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Can you clarify? Can you go over what you said? So in this way, no one is assuming. In this way, no one is going to have a bad feeling about it, because the only way you're going to have a bad feeling is that there's a mixed dialogue. You're misunderstood, you're misunderstanding as to what people have said. So, this is very important to talk about assumptions, because I know I was there. This was my old paradigm. I always used to misconstrued what I had said, or even in my text, or in my, just verbally speaking. It was just misconstrued. And the only way then I realized is that I had to change. And so if we're going to change, then we really have to. And assumption is another part. Like, say, for example, I've got a good friend, and he's worked in psych hospitals for the past 10 years. And, when you're working in a psychiatric hospital, and Ria, you could attest to this, that if you're working in a hospital in that environment, there are always going to be, patients. There are some patients that are very easy to get along with, and there are some patients that are not so easy to get along with. And so if you are a nurse or a doctor in the hospital, you can't make assumptions, because your patient has said to you exactly what is wrong with them. And now it's up to you as a doctor or a nurse now to diagnose. So you can't assume, but Bill said this, because that is then, if something happens to the patient and you prescribe something because you assumed, that is negligence, and you can afford to do that. So it is so crystal clear. You don't have to be a medical professional, but that was just an example I just gave, that when it comes to assuming, when it comes to assumptions in any industry, even at work, your boss says, well, Claire, I really want you to do this presentation tomorrow. Now, hearing what your boss has said, that you want to do the presentation tomorrow, because you heard, or maybe you may not have heard clearly, but then it's your obligation to say to your boss, well, I'm sorry, but could you repeat, when do I have to do the presentation? So in this one, when you actually clarify there and then, and this was the mistake I used to make, I always used to leave it for the next day. And people forget what they've told you even right now, 5 minutes ago. People forget. So do you expect people to remember what they said yesterday? So that's why it's always important. And that's why, coming to this point is when you're knowing and you're doing the opposite what you need to not to be doing, there is a gap. And we want to diminish that gap as much as possible. And I started my the presentation with, when it comes to assumptions, there are only two bases: the beliefs that what has been said and what is the truth, and then you have the facts, the real, raw, solid facts that you can't make assumptions out of. So I'm going to stop right there, because, it comes down to, well, then you start to make mountains out of molehills. You start to make the small things, and they escalate and they expand into the bigger things. And we want to avoid that. It's just like at work, confrontations. You can easily avoid confrontation. You can easily avoid any kind of misunderstandings with anyone, with your peer, with your boss, with your colleagues. Misunderstandings can always be eliminated when you know what the facts are. If you don't know what the facts are, I would not go in and be all cocky about it that you know what is right, because what you know and what you heard are so totally different things. And Ria, what are your thoughts when it comes to assumption?
That's actually correct. I just look up the word, what assumption means, and it means one, arrogance, or it's a presumption. And I'm
Right.
also guilty, of having the presumption of assuming something. And
Mm-hmm.
you are correct in saying, in order for us to not do the presumption or the
Yeah.
assumption, is to confront them right now, right? Not make our own story, but confront them and, tell them what we heard and what we understand, because people say something and we may understand it differently. So we
Right.
have to give back in our own words what our understanding of the statement or of the problem is. And second thing that I always practice now is, aside from confronting or, talking it verbally with the person, I also send an email to confirm that this is what what I understood and what we understood and what we, the person that I was talking to agreed upon. So verbal, confronting it right away, or talking to the person involved face to face if you can, or on the phone. And second, always confirm it using email or some written document.
Exactly. And you know what? That's written documents, and then anything that when you, because like I said, verbally no one really understands, or they may not have understood. You said that verbally, but to always have a backup is to always have it in written. And you know what? This is why lawyers, they want everything in writing. Because why? It's because if anything that you have said to the lawyer, that's just verbal. It doesn't mean it's going to be recognized. But if it's documented, then it gets taken seriously, and then people know, okay, what do they need to act upon? So exactly, Ria, making those presumptions before you've understood what someone has said. And I was guilty of this. In my old paradigms, I was always assuming, oh, I knew everything. But no one does. No one is perfect. So the point of this conversation is, do not presume, do not assume also what someone has said, and have it in written, get them to write it to you, whether it's an email or text it to you. But whether it's written is always better. And absolutely, Ria. So you know what? The reason of this conversation is when it comes to change. When we are changing, and I started this conversation about 2 weeks ago about how do we change and how are we changing. So I really want you to do this homework that I want to set you, and the challenge that I want you to go through is to have that self-awareness, self-control, and self-belief. Okay, these three things I want you to really pay attention as to when you are talking to a friend, or when you're talking to your colleague, or when you're talking to your boss. Pay attention to how are you verbalizing, what are you saying to someone at that moment. Okay, so it's very important to have that self-awareness, and especially have that self-control. And the self-control could be whatever that person might have said, you are going to react. So change, if you're changing, you got to be proactive. You cannot be reactive. So this is my challenge for you today. And we will see you. Thank you for joining the 𝗥𝗵𝗲 show. Ria and I, we love to have you always here with us, because we want to impart knowledge to you for your business and success. So thank you for tuning in, and we will see you the same